Day 4 of our free agency coverage here on the Athletic Football Show. The signings, the moves, they have started to slow down. And so today we're going to zoom out a little bit and just talk about some of the most notable moves that have happened over the last 72 hours or so. We'll talk about our favorite fits, some of the values that we like, some of the bigger, maybe high-risk signings that we think are worth the dive that these teams are making. Before that, Derrik, though, we're going to dive into a couple of the bits of news that have come out over the last week or so. Actually, no. I think we're going to hit some of those in most of the categories that we're talking about today. So let's just get straight to the categories. We've got about a dozen of them here that we want to get to today. Let's just start with those favorite fits. Dave, as you look at the first 72 hours of free agency here, and you look at all of the signings that have happened, what is your favorite fit so far, player to team, that you have seen?
I don't agree with a few of the things that they've done this week, but and he was already doing this, but last night when the Titans traded for Soloman Thomas, completing this Jets back to Titans arc, I really love it. Like Robert Saleh's desire to recreate his Jets D-line and build it around Jeffrey Simmons instead of Quinnen Williams, like that being the main difference. But you got JFM back in the fold. Jermaine Johnson was added way back at the combine. Now you bring in Soloman Thomas. And all those guys are still playing pretty good football. Like Soloman Thomas was a useful piece for the Cowboys. Not anything amazing, but just a good rotational depth piece. Jermaine Johnson. We've talked all week about how much we love JFM. I think that fits, and they're back with Robert Saleh, and I find it very funny, and I think it's going to work.
We'll talk about the Titans a couple different times on this show. Those moves I understand, like trying to rebuild that front and getting guys that have played that front for you. That makes sense to me. A couple of the other things that they did, I'm like, I'm curious why.
It's not all.
We'll get to them in other categories.
Yeah, it's definitely not all good.
What was your favorite fit so far of this week, Derrik, of all the signings that you've seen up to this point?
I have one that's like big ticket and then one that's a little bit smaller ticket. The big ticket one to me is like Ken Walker to the Chiefs. I think is awesome. Like a team that we have for 2 years now desperately said like they need some pop, whether it's at running back, whether it's at tight end, receiver, whatever it is, they need somebody who can get explosives. I think Ken Walker obviously brings that to them so long as he can stay healthy, which this year he did finally after that having kind of been an issue for him for other years. The other one I really loved was Draymond Jones to the Patriots. Like that is just an extremely like, I know like the Caleb on Chason gave them a lot last year, but to now go and get an ass kicker for Mike Vrabel's defense, I'm pretty in love with that.
I like the Patriots did that last year. They signed some attitude guys that could sort of do the Vrabel thing, and just doubling down on it this week has been fun. Like Draymond Jones, Reggie Gilliam is another name that comes to mind. Just make it even more Vrabesy than it already was.
Looking at the Kenneth Walker signing, I can understand an argument that you have enough holes. We're spending $14 million on a running back. Is that the best use of your available resources? But Dave, everything I've come to understand about this running back class in particular is that it's a pretty far departure from what last year's group looked like when there was a ton of guys available into the second through fourth rounds. And so I think that has to play into the discussion. Like this almost feels like 2 years ago when we had that really good free agent running back class. There weren't a lot of running backs available in the draft. It pushed those numbers up a little bit. It feels like that might be happening again. And I think it's easier to get on board with what the Chiefs did, knowing that there might not be the same amount of dart throws in the third and fourth round that there was last year.
I'll say the same thing I said Monday. And I like Kenneth Walker as a player. I don't love the idea of spending that much money on a running back just as a general thing, especially for a team that's a little bit strained financially. But you're so right. You look at it and it becomes a lot more palatable because I use the same example. You draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it doesn't work out, and you spend the next 4 years kicking yourself and saying, that could have been Jonathan Taylor. Holy shit, how good would we be if we had chosen a different running back, number 32 overall instead? This year is not the year to do that. Like it's easy to circle pick 29 because you have it from the Rams now in the Trent McDuffie trade and say, there's our running back. That doesn't really exist this year. It's Jeremiah Love, who's going to be a top 10 pick, even with all the teams that have added running backs. I still think Jeremiah Love's going to be a top 10 pick one way or the other. And then after that, it's a pretty long wait for the next guy. I mean, I think you're talking about his teammate out of Notre Dame, Jadarian Price. You're talking about Jonah Coleman out of Washington. I know Mike Washington out of Arkansas made himself a lot of money at the combine, but there's no consensus second running back off the board. And even if there is, he's probably not going to go until mid to late second round at the absolute earliest. Like there isn't a second first round running back in this class. So you take all that stuff and you say, all right, if you don't want Love at 9, or if you don't think he'll last to 9, this is a fairly effective way to spend your cap space. So I didn't like it at first. And then when you think about the actual parameters of this specific league year, I think it makes more sense.
And you look at what they've done in free agency. I mean, the big ticket items that the Chiefs needed other than running back, they do still need, right? They still want a pass rusher at some point. I will continue to bang this drum until I'm blue in the face. I still want like a big body perimeter receiver as part of this overall like plan that they have going on that side of the ball. I'm curious what the Jauan Jennings market will look like. I'm curious if we get to a place where he is available for a price that the Chiefs can justify adding a guy like that on top of everything else they've done. But even if they don't go do that in free agency, Dave, they have the 9th overall pick. There are potentially receivers available in the top 10. They are picking again in the back half of the first round with that Rams pick. So the idea of them finding an edge rusher and a receiver combined in the first round, that's still very much on the board. And then you look at some of the smaller things that they've done. Alohi Gilman, they signed Kader Kohou today. And so Kader Kohou did not play last year, but he has been a starting caliber nickel in the NFL when he has been healthy. He did not play last year for the Dolphins. And they had no Williams that they drafted in the 3rd round last year. He flashed enough where I think you felt comfortable moving on from Trent McDuffie. And so now the back end, like you could make an argument that what you really need to do here now is kind of replenish that depth in the middle to late rounds, which they consistently do. And so even if they came into free agency with a decent amount of holes, I do think that some of the smaller signings they've made, plus all the picks that they have, there's a chance that we're looking at this team on May 1st. And even with the amount of money allocated to Kenneth Walker, we say, hey, they filled most of the spots we wanted them to this offseason.
They filled most of the spots they wanted to, and outside of maybe somehow finding the money for Trey Hendrickson or whatever, if we just said going into free agency, the Chiefs are going to spend big money on one playmaker somewhere. Ken Walker, like in terms of what they needed and where they needed, was probably the best that they were going to do. Like the Alec Pierce, they were probably going to get priced out of. And then a lot of the other receivers, like I really like Romeo Doubs. I would probably rather spend the amount of money they're spending on Kenneth Walker than I would like a Romeo Doubs. And Romeo Doubs would be a great fit for their offense, but like I like what Kenneth Walker brings to their offense compared to Romeo Doubs.
It's a funny thought, just because I think we're so conditioned to think the receiver is more valuable, but
he's not explosive, and we're all saying, what do they need?
Absolutely. And I think we're trending back toward a place where like running back, it's still positional value still matters, but it doesn't need to be as much of an afterthought as it was 4 or 5 years ago.
And I think Jauan Jennings, there's a chance that Jauan Jennings comes at a similar price to what Kenneth Walker did, $14-ish million a year. And so you might have had to choose between those two guys. And then you think about the draft in concert with that, there is a good chance they have intel that Jeremiah just isn't going to be there for them at 9. And so the idea of going running back at 9 and receiver in free agency, if that's not an option, do you just flip it in the way that they did?
I think as long as you're addressing the things in some way or another, and if you got pick 9 and pick 29, it's a sick year to need an edge. Like even at pick 29,
music to my ears, baby.
You don't say that often. Like even in the back end of the first round, I think there will be guys you'd be excited about. And this isn't the most loaded receiver class of all time, but there's just a lot of them. I mean, I think I've said it before. Dane has 17 in his top 100. So there are always going to be receivers, and it's a great year to need an edge. So when you have all of that in the back of your mind, I think it makes a lot more sense to spend the money on Kenneth Walker.
My favorite fit among all of the signings that have happened up to this point in free agency, I legitimately think, is Jalen Thompson going to the Cowboys.
That is a great one.
I do love that.
Yeah. I just really like that. You look at the price, it's $11 million. The guys at the top of the safety market have made around like 13-ish. Talk about Cam Curl, Brian Cook, Kobe Bryant, all those guys are right in 13. Jalen Thompson's a little bit older, but when you think about all the quarters those Cardinals teams played, what he is a guy coming downhill. He's played in a bunch of different systems. He's a veteran player. I think that's a really good fit for what that defense is likely going to want to look like with Christian Parker. And safety is a position consistently that I like spending that mid-tier free agent contract on, because it's all about what sort of floor are you operating with at that spot. And I think that that's the difference to me of like, and Trevin Merrick is a more dynamic player than Jalen Thompson is. And I think that the Trevin Merrick signing as a second contract player has looked good for the Panthers. But to me, when you get up near the top of the market or you start pushing into like the top 10 at the position, that's where I think maybe you can overpay a little bit. But when you're paying just middle of the road money for starting safeties in free agency, it typically is a good aisle to be shopping in. And so for the Cowboys to go find a guy at that price range that I think fits what they want to be, that's one where the more and more that I think about it, I'm just like, I like that. When they walked into this offseason in a we need to plug some holes place defensively. And I think he's the perfect sort of player for that sort of mindset.
Similar to what you said about the Titans, I don't love everything the Cowboys have done, or more so the lack of some things that they've done, but that's a departure from what they usually do, like spending, what did it come out to? Like 13?
It's $11 million a year.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
way
3 years,
more
33
per
million.
year. Like they rarely cross over the 10 million per year threshold. And even if it's only by a little bit, I spent a couple hours watching him on Monday after that came down, and I was like, oh yeah, this makes all the sense in the world for a lot of reasons. And he is an older player. He's heading into year 8, I believe. He's only 28. He's turning 28. Like he was a young player when he came in. So to be a third contract guy, he's a little bit younger than you might guess for a guy who's starting his third deal. I like that for a lot of reasons.
Let's shift to value here. Just guys that you look at the money and you look at what they could potentially give the teams that they sign with, and you just like the bet that these teams are making. Derrik, let's start with you. Your favorite value signing of free agency as we move through day 4 here has been what?
I mean, talking about safeties, I really like Reed Blankenship to the Texans. Like, I just like there's
gonna be some overlap here on this show if I had to guess.
Like, he just, as a guy who can be a solid roll down in the box, like be your hook player, be a late fitter in the alley, like certain stuff like that. He is really, really good at that. And $8.5-ish million for what they're going to get for him a year is really not that much for like quality level safety play. And he is, again, I've said this before, he is going to be the 5th. When they're in nickel, he's the 5th best DB on the field, which is a great spot to be in when, one, the rest of your secondary is that good. But they've got guys all around the rest of this defense. Obviously, Azeez Al-Shaair is a really good linebacker, and then that front is about as good as it gets. And so I think I really, really like what Reed Blankenship could do for this defense.
Reed Blankenship, we're going to go through a list of categories. The one I put him in was signing you didn't know you needed.
Oh, perfect.
Because like in your mind, you're like, the Texans have everything. Like what? Like I'm not thinking about the Texans defense. They need to fix their offensive line. They need to do this and that. And then when I saw that deal, I was like, yes. Oh my God, that's fun.
Oh, that's funny because one more safety is like, to me, was at one of like the top of their list in terms of what they needed.
I hear you, but like in terms of like what is like a blinking red light, or what would you consider like an
it was like
emergency?
if they didn't address it, they could get away with it.
Exactly.
It's truly like when you're going through an exercise, whatever publication you want to look at, where it's like just team needs and they're listed one after the other positionally. It would be like the third one on the Texans line, but like another starting safety, I feel like is absolutely something they could have done. And so that is the exact type of player that I would have anticipated. There are going to be a couple Texans moves on this list for different categories, but I think that's a really good one. I'll just say mine because I think it's in a similar sort of vein. I love Jaylinn Hawkins for $5 million a year to the Ravens.
It's really good.
Like the conversation we were having about Devin Lloyd, where he gets a little bit less than you thought. And one of the reasons was 1-year producer, as teams were like trying to figure out how much to pay him. Jaylinn Hawkins, same sort of deal, late breakout player. And you have a late breakout player who's a little bit older combined with a flooded market. And so if you're trying to figure out Jaylinn Hawkins played really good football last year.
Yeah.
So how does a guy who played that well only get $5 million? I think those are the two factors. He's a little bit older and there are 10 starting safeties available in free agency. And so the market gets depressed a little bit, but that doesn't mean that a year from now, that $5 million might not look really, really good if he plays even close to the level that he played at last year. And so to get a guy who I think can be that starting caliber safety for you, a starting caliber safety plus for the Ravens at $5 million a year, I think that's one that it could look really good in a year. And even if he doesn't play well, you lose $5 million in the couch cushions in free agency. Like there's just very little risk associated with that sort of move.
Yeah, and I don't even think he needs to play. If he gives you exactly what Alohi Gilman gave you last year, which I think he's a better player than Alohi Gilman, then it's like a very, very good move.
When I was thinking starting caliber safety plus, it was Alohi Gilman plus. Is exactly what I was thinking about in my head as I said that.
One of my lasting memories from this free agency period, when we look back on it in future years, will be when we were in the middle of a conversation about like, Are the Ravens just as stupid as every other team in the NFL after this Max Crosby fiasco? That's when they do that deal, and we're just like, smart team, great signing, classic Ravens.
What's your value pick?
In a world where Tyler Linderbaum got $27 million a year, Connor McGovern got $13 million a year. He's actually the fifth. Getting him for $8 million a year in Detroit. And I get it.
I'd be honest, actually, is my number one. So we're in the same sort. Yeah.
I think getting Cade Mays for a lesser salary to go to Detroit, I love the value there. And I know it's a limited number of reps. Like Biadasz is a 4 or 5 year starter at this point. Like that. So that's the difference, right? Is that the theoretical ceiling for Cade Mays because of the power that he's bringing you. There is like an unrealized bit of potential for him because we just haven't seen him as much. But at center, again, it kind of reminds me of safety where I want the floor. Like I want to make sure that I reach a certain floor at the position. And so Biadasz giving you like quality starter reps at 10 million a year when Linderbaum's getting 27, that's one where I'm like, you know what? I just really like that. As soon as it happened, I really liked it. I think I like the fit with Mays too, though, where he's, I mean, like you talked about having the FU center, but also when you have Jared Goff, I love the idea of having a center who it's hard to push him back. Like he's just a powerful guy who can hopefully give you pocket integrity. He's hard to move around, even if he's not the most athletic center available. And so, to get him at because we go into free agency every year and you're expecting silly money to get thrown around. And sometimes it does, but to get him for $8 million a year, I just think it's extremely good value. And then you look at some of the other good pieces that the Lions have on their line. I liked that a lot.
I had 2 more. Okay. Mike Evans for $14 million a year is phenomenal. I like, even if you think he's on the back half,
that's one
he just has to be good for 1 year.
I wonder how many teams who didn't think they were in the Mike Evans business were like, wait, that's what he was willing to sign for?
Well, he was willing to sign for that in San Francisco. And that's the thing. And so that's one of those moments where when you have a really nice infrastructure, you can potentially coax somebody like that to take a little bit less. And so again, even if we're on the back half with Mike Evans, even if next year is a step back from where he was this year.
We're definitely on the back half of Mike Evans. We're in the twilight of Mike Evans.
Back half is probably the wrong way to say it. If you look at the 2024 production, Mike Evans was an excellent player in 2024. It was a step back of last year. And if we take the similar step back this year, I think that can still happen. And he's worth $14 million a year to your offense. Like that, even if you're baking in further depreciation.
I completely agree with that. I mean, the number that came out blew me away. So what did it came out to like $14 million a year, like after
14 million. I think it was 14 million, like a 1 year kind of $14 million deal is like what it ends up being.
And because you're not paying him to be a 1 now, which is like, you're paying him to be like a 1B on a team that also has George Kittle and also has CMC. Like the skill player group is very full.
It's funny you say that because that was my thought process. I think even if you have doubts about him or if you're not convinced because of the price tag, Romeo Doubs' AAV is outside the top 25 in the current receiver landscape. So like,
I did think you would get more than that. That's
get Romeo Doubs at like $17 million a year. It sounds insane. I consider that a discount or a bargain at least.
It's just the further increase on inflation to like what Darnell Mooney got a couple of years ago. Like that's the like 2-ish receiver. That's the market now. And I think that's kind of what Romeo Doubs is and should be.
To get Doubs for 2 money, basically, and still be able, like, obviously, I think New England needs to try to find a better receiver, but you can do that in the draft. You can, maybe they try to do something crazy like trade for AJ Brown later on in the year, but you're not like, if Romeo Doubs isn't putting up wide receiver 1 numbers, you're like, well, yeah, he's not a wide receiver 1 and we're not paying him like one. So I consider that a good deal.
I have one that's like very, very deep. The Panthers are in a spot where they lose Cade Mays in free agency. He gets paid a little bit more than you might expect coming into the year. Austin Corbett's a free agent. Ike Ekwonu is going to be out for a good chunk of the season with the Achilles. They signed Luke Fortner and Stone Forsythe to a combined $6 million. And I think that's if we need to get by with this, these are the guys we need to get by with. And so to be able to potentially solve those problems for a short period of time for $6 million, I actually think those are like decent signings by the Panthers for where they are right now.
Luke Fortner got to New Orleans with like a bad reputation coming out of Jacksonville, but played well for them. And we'll see where it goes. But like for that money, who cares if it doesn't work out? again, you lose that money in the couch cushions doing the free agency game. So I thought that was a really great budget signing.
All right, let's move beyond value to guys throwing some money around. What is the big money, high risk move that you have liked the most over the first 3 days, Derrik?
It's not insane money because he did take a discount for the reason that he is a high risk move. But Alijah Vera-Tucker for the Patriots is like there's not a guarantee that he's like ever really going to be that healthy again. Obviously, in 2022 and 2023. Only played a combined 12 games because he tore his right tricep in 2022. In 2023, he tore his Achilles. And then obviously last year missed all of 2025 with a torn left tricep. So now both of his triceps have been torn. And so there's a chance that he just never has the same punch that you wanted. He never quite reaches that like Pro Bowl-ish potential, but for as long as he can be on the field, he will probably still be an upgrade. And if he is healthy, in the event that he recovers well from all of these things, he's still relatively young and we know what the ceiling can be. And so I really like that this is a move where, again, it's not insane money, but he could like very clearly overshoot the value here if he just stays on the field.
The guard market in general. So you have AVT at that price, which was a pretty sizable price for a guy who struggled to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. You have Zion Johnson making what Zion Johnson made, given his, let's call it, uneven career up to this point. And then David Edwards is what? Going to be 29 this year?
Yeah.
This is his age 29 season. And those are the guys that all got big money. Like there is some buyer beware with all three of those guys. And with Edwards, obviously, I think he's the safest bet of the three guys at the top of the market, but you had to pay a premium to get him. Like totally. That's a real amount of money that the Saints had to shell out. We'll talk about that signing because I actually like that signing a lot, but I still feel like, I was thinking about this in relation to the Chargers specifically, where people are going to get so frustrated that they have not spent money on a starting guard and then they decided to skimp on, and the guy that they went with was Cole Strange for $6.5 million or whatever it was. And I look at those guard contracts and I'm like, who would you have wanted among all those guys? Like maybe the answer is Soloman, but I still feel like most of those guard contracts that got handed out, like Ed Ingram made $12 million. Like, is that the market that you want to be in? Almost every single one of those guard contracts has come with a pretty big tax for just competency at that position.
Which I think is interesting now too, because a lot of the old like capable guards are still out there. Like Kevin Zeitler is unsigned, Wyatt Teller is unsigned, Joel Bitonio is still unsigned. Like a lot of these guys, for teams that have waited out the guard market, can probably still find an answer if they want to.
And that's the argument, right? Would you rather have, if Joel Bitonio decides to play somewhere that's not Cleveland, and you can get Joel Bitonio for $7 million, would you rather do that over spending $14 million a year on Alijah Vera-Tucker? I don't know. But there's real risk with all of the guard contracts that have been handed out. There's no perfect players.
It's an interesting point about the veterans that are still available. And if the Chargers find their way to one of those guys, it would make me happy. But I think we talked about it a day or two ago where like when you're top three in cap space, who cares if the guy doesn't live up to the deal? Whatever. I'm like, just protect Justin Herbert at all costs. And it's not good optics to not be turning over every stone to try to protect the quarterback that gets killed every single year behind your offensive line.
You got draft picks.
And to bring back two of the guys that have a hand in that too, like Trey Pipkins and Trevor.
Trey Pipkins making like $5 million a year though.
I said, it's optics. It's not, I get it. They're going to do more. I hope they do more because they had the money to do better. I need them to do more. And I think a big thing you have to remember is that it's March 12th and all of these teams are going to look vastly different by the beginning of May. But I don't blame Charger fans if they're frustrated about that.
Dave, what's the high risk move that you have liked the most so far?
I've said it already, but I mean, Jalen Phillips has missed 25% of his possible games as a pro, and he got $30 million, which I consider to be hugely risky. But when he's on the field, his last 2 full seasons, top 10 in pressures. I think it's worth the risk that he's put the injuries behind him. And if he has, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be awesome. You put him on a front with Derek Brown. Nick Scorton showed you some fun stuff last year. Wharton is still there. Like that could be a pretty kick-ass front in short order. And he just needs to be healthy. Like, again, I get nervous projecting, this guy's been a 2 and now he's going to be a 1. Is he worth that kind of money? No. Jalen Phillips whips ass. He just needs to be healthy. So that is a risk, but I feel convicted about who he is as a player as long as he's on the field.
Like it totally is an overpay, but I do like it too because how much did we say
That's my answer too.
Right, because we said last offseason like the Panthers really paid to be competent up front, and they were better up front. The pass rush was still awful for most of the season, outside of a few Nick Scorton moments. And so now pairing him with a guy who is maybe not the best number one style of rusher, but like he can be a number one for you. And so it feels like a lot of money. But again, if he can stay healthy, he's a young player. You know what he is when he's on the field. Like this is probably pretty good for them.
I also think that we can reframe what we think about when it comes to number one rushers. Like the team just won. Who's the Seahawks' best pass rusher?
Great question.
Probably Leonard Williams.
and Leonard Williams is
but on the edge, it's like I don't know. Yeah,
Leonard Williams is a very good player. Yeah. Leonard Williams, if you're talking about like number one rushers on teams, he is not the type of player that comes to mind. Like you don't think of Leonard Williams as like a true ace pass rusher. And obviously the Seahawks are a very unique case, right? Like their third edge rusher just made $20 million a year in free agency. They have a level of depth and quality across the board that you don't normally see. But I also think that we can take some signal from that and just look at these more as collective units rather than, oh, he's not a number one, so he's not worth a certain price. The way I talked about it a lot yesterday when we were discussing some of this stuff. And the place that I've landed with this is impact players, right? Is it an impact player that you were signing in free agency? It's really, really, really hard to find like true impact edges in free agency. For the most part, you are getting rotational guys and guys that are complementary pieces, not really impact guys. And I think that Jaylon Phillips is an impact edge rusher in free agency. And that for players like that, you have to pay a significant premium. And I think I'm okay with them paying a significant premium for that sort of skill set dropped into your team, even if he's not a number one guy who's going to get you 13 sacks.
I think it's fun that he got that contract after a 5-sack season and has never had a double-digit sack season in his career. I mean, that stuff does matter, but yeah, there's more than one way to be dominant as a rusher than to just have 16 sack seasons.
The guy I keep coming back to, and the comparison I've made with this, it reminds me of the Bears and Montez Sweat. Like that is, I think, we're talking tiers of players. That is what it reminds me of. And the Bears had to give up a second-round pick and $24 million a year to get Montez Sweat. So you're paying $30 million, which is a lot, but there's no draft pick involved in that. And so if you think about the overall price for both of those players, I actually think it's an okay thing to do if you're the Panthers. Again, it's risky, but these are the risky moves that are worth making, and I just think that's one of them.
And again, it's just availability. Like when he's out there, he's been a good player multiple times, a really good player multiple times over the course of his career. And that makes me weirdly more comfortable. I know typically you're kind of, you're gun shy of injury, quote unquote, injury prone players or guys that have had a lot of medical issues, but seeing is believing. And I've seen him be that sort of impactful player.
I'm really excited about this one. The signing you didn't know you needed until you saw it. I've got a couple here, Derrik. What is yours? The signing you did not know you needed until you saw it come across your timeline.
Mine is a 2-for-1. I did not know I needed Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean reunited until it happened.
That's a good one. That's actually a really good one. I like that a lot.
That is so sick because obviously in college, I mean, that was, I know Walker's been like a frustrating up and down NFL player, but in college, you can't get a better linebacker duo than those two. And so to see them together again, I'm just super excited for that. Like they are really, really good players at their best. And I know last year was weird for Quay Walker, but I think he started to come on at the end of 2024 when the defensive line in front of him looked better. And then Nakobe Dean, as he got healthier last year, like looked really, really good. So if they can play well together, I'm pretty excited about that again.
I thought that Walker had flashes last year, though. You can still talk yourself
especially early, before the defensive line exploded in front of him.
I understand looking at that guy and being like, he is such a I can fix him guy.
Yeah.
Like, you look at no one has ever been in more and it's not that he needs that much fixing, right? He's a capable player.
Right.
But the idea of I can get more out of him.
I can make him a Pro Bowler.
Yes. And they paid him an amount of money where I think it indicates they think they can get him there. Dave, what is the signing you did not know you needed until you saw it?
I said Reed Blankenship already. Another one similarly, and you might disagree because we talked about it at the time. we knew they needed a CB2. We know that was an issue for them last year, but I wouldn't have guessed Tariq Woolen would wind up in Philly. And
that's a really good one.
When I saw it, I was like, hell yeah. Like, if I didn't realize this was an option because I thought he was going to demand a much bigger, longer contract. And so to get him at that price and what they already have on defense, I was just like, I thought we'd be making a run-of-the-mill signing here. I thought James Pierre would be CB2 in Philly or something like that, and instead it's Tariq Woolen.
I don't like that tone.
No, I know
James
you're right.
Pierre.
No, I love James Pierre. I love that signing for the Vikings, but I thought it would be a much more under-the-radar sort of deal, and instead you get. I mean, Reek's probably in terms of like ability, he didn't get the biggest deal, but like this is the most talented corner available in free agency this year. Or am I forgetting somebody?
I mean, like Jamel Dean, I guess. But
we're going to talk about the cornerback market here in a second.
I would say Tariq Woolen.
Talent-wise, yes. and also it fits Philly so well. Like just an insane volatile market where they build a statue of you if you're good and immediately are angry at you if you're not good. And I think the roller coaster of Tariq Woolen just fits the vibe of Philadelphia so well.
The one thing I'll say about the Tariq Woolen thing, and just because I think one of the categories we're going to hit is the guy who it changed your opinion of his trajectory where you saw him sign. No more Christian Parker in Philadelphia, I think, is at least worth thinking about when it comes to the fact that every single young DB that has landed there, you just like essentially poured gasoline on it, and their development has looked fantastic. Their cornerbacks coach, Roy Anderson, this is his third year there. He got there during the 24 offseason. And so he has been the cornerbacks coach since we got, oh my God, what's
Fangio?
Or who's the corner?
Oh, Quinion?
Jesus Christ.
It's like,
my God, we're deep into day 4 here. Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's Christian Parker not being there anymore. Just one thing to mention. I still think that it's a really good spot, and he's a great answer to Tariq Woolen is for this category. I have 2. I can't believe neither of you guys mentioned this one. Keaton Mitchell to the Chargers.
That is
Keaton Mitchell to the Chargers. I did not know I needed that, and now I desperately need it.
Similar to Salah's bit with his defensive line, when I saw that the Chargers landed him, I laughed out loud at my phone because, of course, Mike McDaniel wanted him.
He's like, I need my fullback and I need my 5'9" speedster, please.
I cannot wait for Keaton Mitchell to have like one 300-yard 3-touchdown game this season.
Hopefully it doesn't come at the expense of your guy Kamani Vidal, though. I mean,
that's okay. I'm willing to sacrifice Kamani in order to get Keaton Mitchell into the Mike McDaniel offense. And the other one, we mentioned his name earlier, and when I see where he signed and the position group he's joining, and we can talk about the philosophy that come along with this. David Edwards going to the Saints.
That was my other one.
I did not know I needed that. And that's one of them where I really like when teams that have a building strength on one of their fronts, they're just like, we're just going to put this thing away. And spending a premium to drop him into that group that already has a lot of young, promising players. If Eric McCoy can get healthy, that's one where I've talked about it in these terms before, but like you drop it in and it all goes green. Like that's to me like what the David Edwards thing is for the Saints offensive line. And I just, even if they had to pay a lot to get him, I really like that one.
And I think it's great too, because listen, they also signed Travis Etienne, who is not a perfect player, but if you set him behind an offensive line like this that can move people, he's got gas when he gets to the open field. And if they can just create some more of those opportunities that way, because Kelvin Banks is moving people, David Edwards is moving people, Fuaga is moving people, like there's a chance that the offense can be kind of fun. I've still got my questions about the defense, but the offense, I'm really intrigued to see what this is going to look like.
I really hope Eric McCoy stays healthy.
Yeah.
I need that desperately.
All right, let's get to the other side of things here. The move that happened that you still don't really understand, whether it's the amount paid to a player, whether it's the fit for the player in the team. What is the move is, even as you've thought about it more, Derrik, you still really can't wrap your head around?
I've got 3, 2 of them we can go through quickly because we've already kind of talked about. Isaac Seumalo like choosing to play for the Cardinals, I think is kind of weird.
That's mine.
He gave an answer. Did you see?
No, what was it?
It's a great quote.
They paid me $10 million a year.
The quote started like, well, of course, money's great. And then he was like, but I wanted to be somewhere where we could build toward winning something with like people that believed in me. And I was like, okay, but the sentence started with,
that's just another version of they paid me the most money.
Paid me more money.
The people who believed in me is truly just another, that's who paid me the most money. Right. That's fine. From his perspective, I will never, ever blame him.
I'll be honest with you. Money's good. But the biggest part is I want to win, and I want to win with a team that wants me here.
And like for someone his age, I do get that too. Like you're on the wrong side of 30. You never know how many more times you're going to get paid.
I'm not trying to hear anybody act like
I feel like someone else could have got him $10 million.
I want to be very clear about this. This is not a Isaac Seumalo question. If he got paid the most money to go to the Cardinals, go with God, my friend. Like, take the $10 million a year. I want what's good for you. Why the Cardinals, who are a rebuilding team that is going to play Jacoby Brissett at quarterback this year, want to spend $10 million a year on a 32-year-old guard? I just don't understand how that price aligns with what they are, what they want to accomplish this year, and the timeline they're going to be on. I maybe there's something I'm not seeing about it, but that one I just don't understand. Like, that's the category.
Yeah, the whole thing just didn't make any sense to me. I think one of my other ones too, like, it's not a signing. Washington cutting Tyler Biadasz still doesn't really make any sense to me. Like, I still think that is bizarre, and so obviously that's not a signing. The signing when I look at it, I understand like they need players at this position, but for the money, I just think it's kind of crazy with given where he's at in his career. The Bills signing Bradley Chubb for like $14 million a year. I was like, I don't know.
We were about to get there. Don't you worry.
That happened 8 minutes after we got off the show yesterday.
Yeah.
Good timing.
So do you have a move you still don't understand?
I have a few actually.
Okay.
Let's talk about Chubb though. We haven't talked about it
because it's the next category that we're going to hit. So I don't want to get us too far ahead of ourselves here. What's the move you still don't understand as you've thought more about it?
I actually completely understand it, and I completely understand the relationship in the building. We don't have to dogpile on Wan'Dale Robinson, but that's just a lot of money for me. Especially like Romeo Doubs and Michael Pittman were both deals that got done that I would have been more in on at a similar level of guy. Mm-hmm. Where I was like, you know, if you go after Wan'Dale Robinson because Romeo Doubs is going to flirt with like $22 million a year, I'm like, okay, I understand that. But if Romeo Doubs is getting $17 million, and I know, you know, maybe playing with Drake May is part of that, and maybe the Patriots had an advantage in negotiations, but also we know the Titans wanted Wan'Dale Robinson. It was a poorly kept secret for like a month.
What I'll say, if you're looking at the construction of those receiver rooms, right? Romeo Doubs is a skill set that the Patriots need in a way that Wan'Dale Robinson isn't, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Titans, I think you can make an argument that what you saw from Io Manor last year is worth continuing down that path and letting him develop. And if you go get Romeo Doubs, I think
you're stepping on that.
You're stepping on his development plan. Chimere Dike is the guy that you're getting ahead of with a Wan'Dale Robinson signing. And I think you should be more okay with that than cutting off Io Manor's potential ability to develop. That's where I would land with it. I want to be very clear about this. I'm not paying Wan'Dale Robinson that amount of money.
It's a lot of money.
I just think that for the Titans specifically, I can understand seeking out that skill set when you have a needed receiver versus somebody like Romeo Doubs because of the way the room is built.
Mm-hmm. Zion Johnson's deal we already touched on is another one where, again, I get how it happens. It's not that I don't understand it.
So let's keep going because that we're touching on what I think the next category speaks to, which is the market for a player that you don't understand. So this is purely based on price. And so Zion Johnson, yours is based on price.
Almost all of these are based mainly on price. The other one, I don't. It's something that happened last night. I'm just gonna put it off to the side because I assume we're not done. I'm curious to see where Dallas goes from trading Osa Odighizuwa. And I get it. They had a glut of D tackles. You got a lot of money at a similar position group, but I feel like something corresponding feels like it's coming, or at least I think it should be. Like, even if Osa doesn't fit what Christian Parker wants to do, you're still taking a good player off your defense and creating more need at a unit that desperately needs good players.
I love that move for the Niners.
I thought you meant for Dallas. No, for the 49ers, it's great.
I think it's really, really good.
He's 28 year. He has a $16.8 million cap hit this year. He's at $20 million each of the next 2 years. I don't think any of that is guaranteed. And so you're taking on what is a 3-year, $57 million deal. So that's $19 million a year for a 28-year-old player. You gave up a 3rd-round pick to do it in a year where the market for interior defensive linemen was absolute dog shit. Yeah, and there was nothing available. And so to come out of this free agency period with this player, even if it cost you a 3rd-round pick, it's just not something that I thought would be available to most teams because of what the pool of interior defensive linemen looked like as we headed into last week.
I didn't either. No, I've spent some of this offseason trying to put another edge up there, but like them getting any juice up front is an obvious win because like, and the other thing too, it's not that there were not that many other like 3 tech guys to go and get. They drafted CJ West last year in the 4th round, who I thought he struggled a lot of last year. Like he just gets moved off the ball a little bit too easily. And then Kevin Givens, who was like a decent rotational player for them, also 3 tech, is not going to be, or at least right now is not on the team. He's a free agent. So they needed a body period, and for them to go out and address it in really the most aggressive way that you could. And they have the cap space to do it. Like this made a lot of sense to me.
I don't think it makes that much sense for the Cowboys. And and people
Jerry's
are
just in there pressing buttons.
Well,
and doing
people
shit,
are going to say like, if he's not a scheme fit, you see this stuff happen with regime changes all the time, where if Christian Parker feels this way, at least you could get a top 100 pick for him. But again, this is one of the most talent poor defenses in the NFL.
I also don't understand how he's not a scheme fit. We just saw Milton Williams win the Eagles a Super Bowl.
That's the crazy thing to me is people are like, well, they're 3-4 now. He's not a scheme fit for what they want to do. I'm like, nobody plays that much in base anyway. Like, what are we doing? You can find a role for a good football player. And considering they've done nothing at linebacker, the cornerback room is a mess. They don't have, their best edge rusher is a 2nd-year player who just had surgery. Ezraku. Like I said, I'm putting it on a shelf until I see what they do, because maybe by the time it's all said and done, it'll look better. But right now, I don't think it looks very good.
And I'll say this: I think that the Eagles, it was fun. I was talking to a coach last offseason during the training camp about this, where the Eagles had this kind of cool situation where it was a Fangio defense, but their Jeremiah Washburn, who is Jim Washburn's son, is on the Eagles staff, and obviously Jim Washburn is that like wide 9 attack front. That's where it started, like way back when. And then Jim Schwartz is a part of that tree, and then Chris Kasurik, and that's all connected. And the Eagles kind of had this world where they were trying to do some of the attack front stuff in a Fangio defense. And so that's where you can have those like one gap penetrators be really productive. And there's a chance that the Cowboys are going to play in a more traditional kind of Fangio way up front. And maybe it's not as much of a fit as a Milton Williams might have been for the 2024 Eagles, but I don't know the answer to that, I guess is what I would say.
I don't either. I just, right now, for where the Cowboys are, and again, this is a team with a quarterback who's turning 33. I would think you want to maximize that. I'm not trying to ship good players off of my defense, even if they do get a top 100 pick in return. But by May, maybe I'll feel differently. But I saw that last night, and I was like, yes, I love this for San Francisco. I don't understand the vision for Dallas, but we'll see.
So my markets, I did not understand. I have 2 of them. Bradley Chubb was the first one. It just, I don't think when I saw it, it wasn't that I got to the end of thinking about it. I was like, oh man, that's a terrible contract. It was mostly just, it's surprising that he got that amount of money and like guarantees into the 2nd year. I just didn't necessarily expect that given his injury history, but he was healthy last year. He was a productive player last year. It's what, $14 million a year. So I don't think it's crazy. I was just surprised that the market was that healthy for him, given his history and age.
So was I, which I guess given it's Buffalo, they're kind of like desperate to really try to like get things going right now. So maybe that's
Leonard
part of
connection,
it.
Like, right. So he's coming from Denver. He was in Denver. Like it's somebody that is familiar with the way they want to play. And so there's some connections there to be made. I was just surprised that it was that much. And that again, I thought he'd be like a 1 year, 17 million kind of guy rather than a multiple year deal with guarantees into the second year.
I wasn't surprised when I saw the team, because this is Buffalo's favorite thing in the world.
$30 million guaranteed.
It was a lot of money. The numbers were big.
Guaranteed. $29 million guaranteed for Bradley Chubb heading into his age 30 season. That is surprising to me.
If Buffalo doesn't have an old, expensive edge rusher joining them to try to get them over the top, like what are they even going to do with themselves?
They have to do it. The other one, and again, it's not that I necessarily hate it. I was just surprised that he got this amount of money. And I was talking to a coach that they were in the nickel market as well. And he was like, I can't believe Dee Alford got the amount of money that he got from the Bills. And Dee Alford played well last year, but it was, again, just one of those markets where I was like, man, I'm just surprised Dee Alford got that kind of contract on the market.
Which that to me too, and I said this a little bit about Alante Taylor. If you really needed a nickel, how many options did you really have this offseason? Like there just were not that many of them. So I do wonder if a team was like, listen, we know he can at least give us passable play. And the Bills were a little bit desperate to at least get passable and hope that maybe he has a little more in their defense.
Okay. So the next category we wanted to talk about was positional markets that were a little bit surprising to you. And my answer to that is the top of the cornerback market was richer than I expected it to be. Jawaan Taylor getting $19 million a year from the Titans. That is not something I had on my bingo card heading into free agency. No. And you could even extend that. Cordell Flott getting $15 million a year is not something that I expected. The Titans overall being that aggressive signing corners is not something I necessarily expected. So that entire situation in Tennessee was just not something I saw happening and unfolding, whether that's the players getting the amount of money that they did or the Titans being the team to shell it out. And even Jalen Watson getting $17 million a year for the Rams. I just thought those numbers would come in a little bit cheaper than that, and they did not. So like Alohi Taylor getting 19, Jalen Watson getting 17, and Cordell Flott getting 15. That is not something I expected.
Snead's still on their roster, right?
Yeah, but that's
I figured as much, but they've spent a lot of money at the position.
Any markets positionally that you were surprised by how they unfolded?
Some of the linebacker contracts were like a little more up and down than I thought. Like Walker and Dean being so close, I think based on some of their potential and injury history was a little bit interesting to me. And then again, I know Devin Lloyd is a little bit older than maybe we realized for a second contract player, but I did think given that he was maybe the most high potential player on the market at the position, I kind of thought that he would get a little bit more, especially with some of the other players that we've seen get in that $15 million range already. I kind of thought maybe he would creep up closer to 17, 18. So I think just some of those numbers came in a little bit lower than I expected. And then Dean came in like slightly higher than I expected.
When I look at the Titans signing those guys, when you look back at like Robert Saleh defenses, when Travarius Ward signed with the Niners, was Saleh the defensive coordinator there? Or was that after Saleh had already left? That was after Saleh had already left for the Jets. So I don't know, man. I just did not expect them to go that hard at corner specifically. And I don't know if those guys are worth those price tags.
I admire what they did with their line, but
that's what I would expect, right? Like that's where I would expect them to shell out money is up front. And they did that. But to pair that with spending as much money as they did in the secondary on the heels of the Snead thing, which just did not work out. And I know it's a different front office, all of that, but I don't know. That one was just surprising to me.
I'm trying to gauge. I think I made a joke about this before. Free agency is like when you see the Titans do something, I just associate it with so many bad moves. Like I think that colors my perception a little bit. But Wan'Dale and these corners, I'm just like, this reminds me of Titans disaster deals from years past. That doesn't mean they're guaranteed to not live up to those expectations, but I do think that colors my perception a little bit, even though it's completely different front offices doing it.
The other market positionally is a very specific market. The fourth contract defensive tackle market,
oh my God,
was richer over the last day than I thought it would be. Like the idea that Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen got cut, and then Hargrave gets $12 million a year. And I believe only 1 year of that is guaranteed. I think it's like $11 million a year for Hargrave. I think essentially only 1 year of that is guaranteed. That's fine. But to see Jonathan Allen get $13 million a year on that deal from the Bengals, I don't even necessarily dislike that. I was just surprised after the way that last year went for those guys to be scooped up this quickly and at those prices.
I was joking about Derrik with this before we started recording. Like, I'm just kind of surprised that they signed those deals in Minnesota. I don't think they were awful. Like, you go back and watch the Vikings. Like, there were moments there and you saw flashes, but just not like the well-rounded, dominant players you might have remembered. For them to play that way on big deals, get cut. And yeah, it's one thing if somebody wants to give them some money, but immediately snatched up and given a fair amount of guarantees is what surprised me. And maybe like Green Bay makes a little more sense to me because
you have the what's it called? You have the Gannon connection there.
Well, so also they're desperate.
The Gannon connection. You need bodies. Micah potentially could not be there for the season. Like even like that's what when the deal came down, people were like, "Well, he doesn't defend the run," and I was like, if Micah needs some time to get back on the field, you need somebody that can rush the passer from somewhere. So it makes a little more sense, but I was surprised at how quickly those guys got re-signed and how big the deals were.
The move that has happened over the last few days that has changed the way that you view a guy's trajectory is what?
Jalen Watson to the Rams was one that like I think he obviously played pretty well for stretches in Kansas City. I just wondered, a guy like him, I was like, there are certain players when they play well in a certain defense, I'm like, what does it look like elsewhere? And I think sometimes for corners and Spag system, unless you were like clearly above that, like Trent McDuffie at his best is clearly above that. But Jalen Watson, I had some questions. The fact that now he is paired with Trent McDuffie again is nice. But then I think there, in some of the ways that they call the defense, there is some overlap in what Shula does to a lot of what the Spagnuolo stuff does.
Yep.
And so now pairing that with how insane the front is, I'm like, okay, there's actually a chance that we do see some of the best of Jalen Watson. Whereas I think if he had landed in some other spots, I would have been like, I'm not entirely sure how much I love that deal.
I think that's a good one.
So this is the opposite of what I was talking about with like Jaylin Phillips. My number one thing I'm scared of and what I'm trying to avoid is giving a guy a shitload of money in the hopes that he can ascend into a different tier of player. So for starters, Kwity Paye didn't break the bank in a way that I was guessing he might. And like it was like 3 years, $48 million, perfectly reasonable amount of money for a guy anyway, to the point where I'm like, okay, this is fine. Then Max Crosby lands back in Vegas. Obviously, we don't know if it's going to stay that way, but he put up his Undertaker video last night, and it's certainly, he's making it sound like he's happy staying in Vegas. If you get Kwity Paye for that deal, and now he's unquestionably your number 2, and you have Max Crosby back on your line as your force multiplier, I like that a lot. Where I'm like, oh, Kwity Paye could do some damage there if that is the hierarchy of things. And on top of that, it's not costing you as much money as I might have guessed. I went into the week like, ooh, I'm terrified of who's going to be asking Kwity Paye to become their best pass rusher. And now I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. This is an amazing landing spot for Kwity Paye.
Counterpoint. I'm still not sure Kwity Paye is your second best pass rusher.
Who am I behind Malcolm? If Malcolm Kuntz looks healthier?
I'm just saying, like,
or
if
just
you're paying him to be your second best pass rusher, I'm not sure that's the place you want to be. Yeah. I am too close to the Dio Dengbo situation from last year. I'm too
Same
close.
Team.
I'm too close to it.
If he is a reliable, like 6 to 8 sack guy at $16 million a year, I don't think you're going to regret that.
Which is kind of what we said about Dio Dengbo.
I mean, fair.
He had 4 sacks last year. He had 8 the year before and 8.5 the year before.
He's
solid.
He's solid. He's probably, like, considering he's a first round pick, not what you're hoping for, but like he's been perfectly fine.
I have one on each side of this, where a guy whose trajectory I'm more excited about in a positive way. And the second one is, there's some nuance to it, which we can talk about. Logan Hall going to the Texans for $6 million a year. The Texans are one of those teams where when they sign a defensive lineman, I pay attention. It's like, all right, okay, why? And like, what is that guy going to look like? And so
they're the new Niners, which is not surprising.
Yeah, they're very much in that. So like this is perfect to me. Okay. So last year, I mean, let me look at this because now I'm curious about the actual numbers on it. And we can dig through this. Okay. So in 2024, Tim Settle signs a 2-year, $6 million contract with the Texans. This week, at age 29, so 2 years later, he goes from making $3 million a year with the Texans to making $8 million a year with the Commanders. Instead of re-signing 29-year-old Tim Settle, the Texans decide that they are going to sign Logan Hall, who is 25 years old, to a contract that's $2 million a year or less. And so now I'm excited for Logan Hall's contract to be up with the Texans in 2 years and for him to make $9 million for whoever signs him next. This happens consistently. Like, it's consistently happening with the Texans. Tommy Togiai has played well for them. Rankins had that bounce back season. And so watching Logan Hall and a guy that is young is going to be switching schemes. Yeah. Like, it's just, there is a lot there where I'm like, I would not be the least bit surprised if we're looking there in week 8. And it's like, man, Logan Hall's really outplayed that contract he got from the Texans.
Pick 32, by the way, which so not dealing with the signing a high draft pick that you usually see.
Yeah, that's one where I'm like, oh man, okay, I'm paying attention to that. The other one, and again, I think he'll be fine. It's mostly that I just wanted to see him on a good team because I thought that he would be a nice addition to an overall defensive line room watching Kingsley Enagbare go to the Jets was like just a little bit disappointing for me. And that's fine. The Jets are a rebuilding team. He's a youngish player. I think the price tag was fine. I just more wanted to be watching Kingsley Enagbare in a meaningful Week 12 game this year as part of like a really good defense. And that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I did too. At least it is only a 1-year deal. So maybe he's just doing this so like I can flash here and then I can go somewhere else. But
again, he made $10. Like, it was a healthy deal. He signed very early in free agency. I just thought I wanted to see him as part of a contending team.
Totally.
That's how I felt about DeMario, which they're teammates now.
All right, let's finish this up. We have a couple more, but we're running a little bit long here. Let's finish this up with the guys who have not signed quite yet that you are most interested in what their landing spot is going to look like. Derrik, why don't you kick us off?
So one of my categories actually was the old man guards, which we've already talked about a little bit. My other one is a boring player who I think would actually be really good if you're one of these contending like 4-3 style of teams. AJ Epinesa, I think like if you need a third defensive end who is long, defends the run, pushes the pocket a little bit, I'm thinking teams like the Lions. If the Niners can now, I know their cap situation is a little bit different now with the Odighizuwa contract, but like he would be a good third guy for them. The Seahawks have enough money that if they want to replace the edge room a little bit, that he could make some sense for them. So just a guy who is going to give you really good early down snaps, every now and then push the pocket for you. I just think that he's like a solid player for a contending team.
I'll give you like the puzzle piece version of that. A guy who was just on the Lions is not an early down snap guy, but I do think is going to give you production right now. Al-Qadim Muhammad has been good for the Lions over the last couple of years as a rotational pass rusher. Tom Pelissero reported earlier today that he's visiting the Bucs. That's one where I'm curious where he lands because, again, his career is fascinating, right? Like he's bounced around. He signed, I think, mid-season with the Lions, or at least got onto the field late in the season with the Lions 2 years ago. And you're watching him late in the season for the Lions when that entire defense is injured 2 years ago. It's like, holy shit, he looks incredible. And he played really well again last year. And so
I think wasn't it the Ravens game early in the year before we knew the Ravens were struggling where he wrecked shop that game, didn't he?
This is his age 31 season, right? And so he's played for 6 teams. And I just think he played so much better for the Lions than I ever would have anticipated. And so just as a rotational pass rusher, I am curious where he lands. And for the Bucs specifically, I think this is a way to get some pass rush juice in the building for what is probably not going to cost a lot of money.
That is a really good solution. In terms of like purely just getting a third down guy, it's probably the best that they're going to do left in this market.
So that's one of the ones that I had. The two others, I mean, this one's obvious, like, when does Kyler sign with the Vikings?
I was going to say, it's not interesting because it will be with the Vikings.
And then mine before he signed today was Jonathan Allen. I was curious where Jonathan Allen would be. So now obviously we have an answer to that. And then the last one in terms of like bigger money guys that have not signed yet, and most of the players at his position and his tier have already found a team, is what happens with Jaquan Brisker.
Yeah.
Where Jaquan Brisker goes, which
you
I
think it's mainly
right now.
Health related, why he would still be out there?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Obviously the concussions and the history with that is something to keep in mind, but he's one of the guys where that's one of the last kind of remaining dominoes.
Maybe this is just my bias because I love him. I'm a little bit surprised Jauan Jennings is still out there. Yeah. Who else? The guards are a good one. I know people dog on him and he's a frustrating player. I would have thought somebody would prioritize Jawaan Taylor a little bit more just because a starting right tackle is not easy to come by. And then just because of his explosive ability, what he can give you as a threat, I would have guessed David Njoku would have had suitors by now.
So that's a great one. I really do think that he's like a nice answer for somebody at tight end.
Like it's David Njoku at the point in his career where teams are like, hey, we're going to see what happens in the draft because there's a ton of tight ends. And then we'd be happy to give you $8 million in June. And he might have his pick of like 2 or 3 really good teams that just don't want to do it right now.
That's a really good point, which again, there might be some team, post-draft that they miss out and they sign David Njoku. I'm like, I'm a little bit more interested in their offense now.
This is definitely a year to wait and see how the draft shakes out if you want a tight end. And I mean, now that I've said this, David Njoku is going to sign on Friday night, but it wouldn't be surprising if that's how teams were looking at this.
It's interesting. Like, you look at it right now, and I don't think there's like a really clear-cut answer to who needs a right tackle like Jawaan Taylor.
Maybe that's the issue.
I'm looking at like the entire league depth chart wise at right tackle. Like we'll see what happens with the Browns. Like does Titus Howard play guard?
Mhm.
Because if he's going to play guard, then I think they're a team that would need a starting right tackle. So I throw out them out there. They've been willing to throw money at anybody who can start for them. That's a team I would mention. Kind of running through these, like the Raiders, right? Like DJ Glaze is there now. Like we'll see what they want to do with him. Is that something where they'd rather draft somebody rather than spend a decent amount of money on an aging guy like Jawaan Taylor?
Reckless bullshit. Can I?
Of course, always.
If you're willing to ask Penei Sewell to move to left tackle, Detroit.
Okay.
Well, so they signed Larry Borum in free agency.
Oh, they did
and
do that.
And I
forgot about
wonder
that.
what that means. I wonder if
That's not a deal that guarantees him playing
Oh
time.
God, he was for $5 million.
Yeah.
I mean, they're absolutely not. I mean, there's 100% a chance that that's just a depth piece for them, but they at least did something to address their
Right.
tackle depth with Taylor Decker moving on. All right, we've got one bit of breaking news here before we get out of here. Oh, this is a fun one.
Oh, is it? What do we got?
Dre Greenlaw back to the Niners.
Oh, that's incredible.
shocked.
I love that.
I'm shocked.
Dre Greenlaw back to the Niners about a day after he was cut by the Broncos. 1 year, $7.5 million per Ian Rappaport. I assume there's some up to involved at that, considering he was just cut. But
Sorry, what was the number?
1 year, $7.5 million per Ian Rappaport.
Okay. I mean, I still like this. If he still looked solid when he got on the field last year. It's just he missed a lot of time again, and so obviously that's a huge consideration for them. But if the Niners can get back to a point where their three linebackers are very good again, and I know D Winters was an exciting player last year. I still think the best of Dre Greenlaw, if he's healthy, is a better player right now. But if those are your three guys, that is a really, really good spot to be in. When going into last year, we weren't sure if they had a good second linebacker, let alone now having potentially three again.
All right. That is all we've got for today. As we said earlier this week, we will not have a live show coming your guys' way tomorrow, but we will have a podcast coming every single day next week. So there will be a new show in your feed on Monday. Building the Beast will be back next Wednesday. So we'll be chatting a little bit about how free agency has affected this year's draft. And then we will have another week's worth of free agency coverage next week. Last year, we did a set of shows about how much better these teams are really after all of these signings have come down. We'll do versions of that show next week. We'll talk about some of the remaining questions that we still have after free agency. And then when we get to the end of next week, March 20th, that should be our last purely free agency podcast. Starting March 23rd, a week from Monday, it is all draft all the time here on the Athletic Football Show for about a month before we get to the actual draft. We will talk more about what our live production for the draft is going to look like this year. We're blowing it out again. Very much looking forward to that. But a lot of time between now and then and plenty more free agency discussions to be had. For now, that's all we got. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you very soon.